Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Janae Giles, welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, Elizabeth, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here.
And I'm really excited because this is a pod swap. So you interviewed me for your big summit coming up. And I'm interviewing you for the Evergreen podcast. So I'm very excited about all of this.
Fantastic.
Before we get started on the actual questions, this is one of the things I ask everybody. Who would be your dream interview? If you could interview somebody who's no longer with us, who would it be? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
I would love to interview Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and ask her where she got that amazing resilience, that energy. I mean, she had to have had structures in place to help her create balance in her life. Mm-hmm. She was such a passionate worker, working for the law. And it's just amazing to me.
I love that you asked this. I'm going to ask you a little bit more because a lot of people have said, oh, yes, they would like to interview the notorious RBG. And I'm a big fan of hers. I'm wearing my pearls for her.
Yeah.
And, but you're the first person who really thought about how she fit it all together. So tell me a little more what you would ask her about. If you were, say, doing an interview in front of a crowd, I would be listening. What would you ask?
I mean, I would be fascinated to learn what her daily routine was like. Mm-hmm. What did she do for herself to be able to keep all that energy up for the long haul? What kind of foods did she eat? What kind of practices did she have in her life? I mean, I know she worked out with a trainer, and that's huge. But there had to have been other support structures that she had in place for herself in order to really have that passion and that energy sustain her all until she passed.
Mm-hmm. Well, good for, and then she survived cancer after cancer after cancer. So
right.
Yeah. Well, that would be great. I would certainly, who should be listening then?
Well, I mean, really it's my audience, it's your audience. It is every single woman who is in the corporate arena, who's a professional out there. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a trailblazer. Well, Our audience, they are trailblazers, whether they recognize that or not, right? So it's women your age, my age, and everyone that's younger, and far and wide.
It's I think often about the suffragists. Since last year we had the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 20th Amendment, and how much they worked to do it. I mean, it took them, I think, 47 years, more than that. It took years to help.
And now if we could just get the ERA ratified, right?
Yeah, I remember that people were talking about the ERA when I was in high school, which was a few years ago. So just a couple years ago. But here's another thing, though. In those days and in the 70s, when women were talking about women's liberation and such, there weren't really role models.
Right.
So one of the great things that Ruth Bader Ginsburg did was she offered a role model to younger women and trained younger women and mentored
Right.
younger women,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. You were saying that the women you work with, the corporate women you work with, are trailblazers, even if they don't know it. Can you expand on that a little bit?
The women in our audience feel like they have imposter syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is for a reason. That's because they are pushing their edge, they're striving, they're reaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're really trying to create something. They have a vision, and most likely it's not a path that somebody else has created for them.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that not trailblazing, whether it's in STEM of, any arena within STEM or business, innovation, society? We're all pushing our edge, right?
Right.
In order to help create something new, innovative.
And what you're doing is talking about going from burnout to balance. So I've got a whole list of questions here for you. But before I deepen, you mentioned that there was one concept you'd like to share right away at the beginning. What's that?
Yeah. So I really want the women in our audience to hear me now. There is a different way of being instead of sustaining the grind. There is a way so that you will truly show up as your best self, so that you will actually be producing, leading, innovating at optimal levels. And there's a way so that you're not slowly killing yourself.
Okay. So, and why are you so focused on women in the corporate environment in this context?
Thank you. Yeah, I used to be them. I was in an intense advertising industry career for over 20 years, and I had some time in tech as well. And to be honest, I got slammed to the ground many times from stress. And I was trying to be Superwoman and kept taking on more and more and more, just ramping it up. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that, the corporate environment has a lot to learn and change. There are segments of the corporate arena that are shifting in positive ways to help support their greatest resource, which is their people, right? Mm-hmm. But I really believe that we as women have to learn and do differently for ourselves, because I believe that it is within the brilliance of women shining bright, feeling good, and thriving, having even balanced, reliable energy and presence and balance in their lives. That is where we are going to find these solutions that this world needs right now.
It's interesting that you're saying this. It reminds me of lessons that I got when I was in the opera. And, when I was directing operas, I was used to working very hard and then taking breaks. And, you work till it's done and then you rest. And when I ran the Tyrolean Opera program, I was working 6 days a week, 14 hours a day. And as well as getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do my thinking in the only time when people would not talk to me. And I got sick. And then the next year I got sick again. And then I got sick again. And it finally dawned on me that job, which was the company I had built and the thing I loved, was making me sick. And that in my 50s, I could not do the hours that I used to be able to do in my 30s.
Yeah.
And I had to learn. I get that. So is it ever possible to stop before you hit a wall? I don't know if most of the time I have to be slapped upside the head to learn a lesson like that. Is it ever possible?
It is. It is possible. I've been slammed to the ground a couple of times. You've hit several walls. And I'm sure that the women in our audience can relate in one way or another, whether it's witnessing other people experiencing that or they see it coming for themselves, right? Mm-hmm. But there is a way of identifying, seeing the little signs, starting to notice yourself. Are you recognizing yourself? Or are you more agitated, annoyed more often than you'd like to be? Do you feel exhausted more than you'd like to admit? Do you wake up exhausted? Are you not sleeping well? These little signs it's your body speaking to you, asking for compassion and help, right? Mm-hmm. There's only so much that your body can do until you will get sick. If you are running on fumes, when you get into that fight, flight, freeze response, that fight, flight response sends all of this energy to your brain and to your large muscles, right? So if you imagine you're a zebra on the savannah and there's a lion coming at you, your brain and your body has to jump in to get to safety mode, right?
Right.
Well, all that energy is now being taken away from digesting the foods you've ingested to fuel your mind and body, and also things like immunity. So it really affects your entire life, living in this ever increasing high stress, layering on top existence. It really does impact you.
So let's go a little bit more into the warning signs, because it's easy to just brush them off and say, "Oh yes, I'll rest soon." But except, my kids are asking for this and all of that. How can we become aware enough to really notice what's where there's a problem, and then what can we do about it?
Giving yourself the gift of slowing down at least once a day, just to start, right? Just to start for 5 minutes. Allow yourself to just set an alarm on your phone, gentle chimes, and breathe. Connect to your breath and the sensations of breathing deeply, relaxing your muscles for 5 minutes a day. Notice how your nervous system can just drop a little bit more. So you might be in that heightened state. If you're starting to feel the contrast, if you're starting to recognize the contrast, okay, I'm going to try. Janae says, try 5 minutes. I'm going to set an alarm on my phone, so I'm not watching the clock. I'm just going to sit and breathe. Or maybe it's walk and breathe. Even better, to help you metabolize the stress hormones, right?
Okay.
Notice how you feel. Are you more clear when you do that? Are you feeling more easeful, more grounded, more focused? Just notice. Give yourself a little A/B testing. How do I feel before? How do I feel after?
How do you, when you've taken time off, it's hard to get back into the swing of things. So how do you pick up again?
I think a great way to prepare yourself, you've I don't know, taken time off, gone on a vacation, what have you, is recognize your wins that you accomplished before the break.
Mm-hmm.
So it's speaking to the cells of your body. Wow, okay, we accomplished something. So looking at and recognizing your wins,
Mm-hmm.
and then allowing yourself to get excited about the next small win.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we can shift from having, okay, I've got this goal, and now I've ticked that off and I'm on to the next one, because we're goal-oriented beings, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
At least in this community. If we can at least acknowledge those smaller milestones along the way, it will help energize us more. Instead of just thinking of the huge amount of work and task at hand that can feel overwhelming.
Yeah. Taking the time to celebrate something.
Yeah.
I've found, or having an accountability buddy who will work with you to remind you, what did you accomplish, instead of just saying, that's done, it's over. Okay, what am I not? It's so easy to live in the, oh, there's so much more to do, and to focus on what you haven't done instead of what you have.
And that really impacts your mood and how you approach everything, right? So if your mindset is focused on the weight of it all versus, hey, look at how far I've come. What's my next milestone that I can get excited about and celebrate? Even if it's just taking 5 minutes for a delicious cup of whatever, you know, tea or bubbles of some sort, or whatever it might be, just to acknowledge, right? The more we as women start to acknowledge within ourselves, if we acknowledge within ourselves, then society will also start to do that, right? It has to start with us.
Right. And I think that's also how you set boundaries. If quite often the boundaries that we think everybody expects us to have, doing this, this, and this, and this,
right,
so much of that can be self-imposed.
Yes.
And if you say, I'm not going to work past 5 o'clock on this day, people are beginning to understand that's
right.
You know, I have to. There's something else I have to do that day.
Yeah.
So, yeah. When you have a really unique program, I mean, what we're talking about, balance and boundaries and all of that. I mean, a lot of people talk about that, but what you do is truly unique. Tell us how it is, what it is that you do, and maybe give us an example of someone for whom it really worked.
Sure. So over the many years that I have been studying and practicing and doing trial and error and everything else, I really created my PACE coaching methodology by interweaving.
Wait, did you say peace or pace?
PACE, PACE.
PACE, okay.
Yeah, and it's basically it's interweaving transformational coaching with Ayurvedic consulting.
Ah, okay.
And so you get this holistic approach, and you're also focusing on the deep-rooted concepts you've adopted, ideas or stories that maybe are no longer serving you and driving you, but then also supporting you, your physical body, your mental, emotional body, and allowing that holistic approach to really help you slowly over time dial things in so that you have radiant health and wellness, and even energy, focus, presence, balance, all of these things, right?
So, for those of our listeners who are not familiar with Ayurvedic coaching, can you define that, please?
Sure. It is a holistic healing modality from India, and it is said to be over 5,000 years old. Some of you might be a little more familiar with Chinese medicine. It's very akin to that. And in Ayurveda, we look at your entire life. So your career, your schedule, your cultural heritage, and how you compare to most within your familiar group. And we look at how you eat, when you sleep, what you do to prepare for your day or end your day, everything, in order to customize for you. So it's not, just a cookie cutter kind of templatized approach. It is fully customized for you. Mm-hmm. But my program is built, don't worry, it's built to not overload and not overwhelm. Mm-hmm. So it creates these very thin layers. I love this analogy because it's from my family, but my mom on the weekend mornings, she would start making croissant, right? Uh-huh. And I don't know if you know how to make it, but you roll the dough, you slather it with butter, you fold it, roll it, put it in the fridge. And she would do this, all day to make those thin layers.
You have to roll the dough over and over again and chill in between. And over, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a labor of love if you're making it at home, right? And I kind of feel like it's this gift that you get after making croissant, just like the women I work with, when they start making these very gentle, palatable habit shifts, mindset shifts, and changes throughout their life. It seems so simple as we go, but it's very impactful.
So, Janae, that's a wonderful story about your mother making croissants. That's a lot of work, and it takes time. You said something about the coaching process, or was it maybe the healing process being like a croissant? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, making croissant, it's such basic action, right? Rolling, slathering with butter, flipping over, rolling again. There's such easy, simple actions that make, in the end, over and over and over, after hours of that process, it makes something special and something that couldn't have been made just out of a can. Have you ever
waving a magic wand, right?
Have you ever
microwave yourself with the help? Right.
The crescent rolls out of a smushed can thing, they're just not the same as fresh made croissant. Well, the healing process or the balancing process, not all the women that I work with are completely fried to a cinder yet, but they see that that's coming down the path, right? As long as they can easily adopt or adapt these simple patterns, habits that support them, uniquely identified for them, we don't have the negative effects of, say, popping a prescriptive pill. Now, I know that prescriptions are important, and I'm not saying anything negative about like taking your meds when you need them. But if you can avoid having to rely on pharmaceuticals and do things in a more natural way, then you don't have those negative effects or problems caused by popping a pill, right? Mm-hmm.
So really what you're saying is it's a process. It sounds like it's a process where we have to train ourselves, teach ourselves it's okay to pause. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. And also, one thing I hear often is, we spent thousands of dollars on trying to resolve this thing for my child because it's for my family.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've spent thousands of dollars and it has to be because and justification on why that much money was spent. But the thing is we as women need to remember that it is important for us to take the time to invest in ourselves
Yes.
in order to get to the deep root of what's driving us into the ground in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
to figure out what habits we've adopted that are actually negatively impacting us,
Mm-hmm.
and what we can do differently that will make us so much more powerful as women.
Can you give us an example of somebody who came to you, this a situation of someone who, for whom this croissant technique worked?
Sure. I have a client who came to me who was completely overwhelmed. She's a high achiever and a real go-getter. I mean, her title was much higher than her age would normally match to. And she was having such a hard time with anxiety and also the pressure that she had placed on herself, impacting her in such negative ways.
Mm-hmm.
She also had a pattern with relationships that did not support her. And by the end of working together, she not only got a raise, she increased her level and title again. She also kicked the first guy to the curb and found an amazing new partner. And she reconnected with family in a deeper way because she was feeling better about herself more deeply. And she also just felt this freedom to go and do things that she dreamt of doing. In fact, she just moved to New York. It's like she was dreaming of living there and she just did it. So it's really exciting.
That's wonderful. Well, Janae Giles, this has been fascinating. If you could leave us with just one thought or one place or a first place to start, what would it be?
What is the inner critic or the mean girl saying to you on a regular basis?
Mm-hmm.
And consider, would you say that to your best friend?
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And just consider how you speak to yourself.
Okay. That's great. Janae Giles, it has been wonderful to have you on Speakers Who Get Results. Where can we find out more?
Thank you so much. Yeah, they can find me at JanaeGiles.com, spelled JANNAGILES.com. And if this has resonated with them, and if they would like to learn more on how they can make some massive shifts in their lives, they are welcome to a 1-hour complimentary Resilient Rising Woman strategy session with me, where we'll look at what's happening in their lives, what's present in their life right now, and maybe discover some challenges, blocks, or stories that are in their way, as well as maybe some other habits from an Ayurvedic perspective that might be challenging their energy. And then I would offer them some 3 actionable, tangible suggestions, recommendations, and discuss maybe how we can work together.
All of that in a free call. Wow. So we will be posting, dear listeners, we will be posting this all in the show notes. So be sure you go to the show notes and look for the links that we'll have there. Janae, thank you so much for having been on Speakers Who Get Results. Speakers Who Get Results, which is the podcast where we interview experts from around the world on really how to be better people, including to go from burnout to balance. As a reminder, if you're curious how your presentation skills are helping you, you can go to our free 4-minute assessment at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can find where your presentation skills are strong and working, and where a few tweaks, maybe a little bit of support, could you get you the results and the recognition you need. This has been Elizabeth Bachman, your host. I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.